Dave Hanratty, we're discussing the latest allegations of sexual assault against Jared Leto. Now, he is a big name in Hollywood, has been for many, many years. But how big?
That's a good question, because I would argue that his career peaked in the 90s, early 2000s, and since then has been kind of on a downward spiral in terms of both quality and even box office attraction. He's a household name, though. A lot of people know who this guy is. They recognise the face. They know he also has a band. So he's in it. Like, he starts out, he comes from nothing. He comes from a background of poverty, single mother, and he eventually breaks into, I guess, this breakout show, My So-Called Life, in the mid-90s, becomes a teen heartthrob, and from there, people want to cast him because he's a very, very good-looking dude. Like, in fairness to him, I mean, he's 54 now. He looks a lot younger. He just is blessed with these genes that has seen him get into some modelling as well, of course. But a big name in terms of, like I say, notoriety, recognisable, but if you look at his last few films, etc., like, they're not setting the box office alight.
I get it from a sense, Dave, that you're not a big fan, but he is in movies that were hugely successful.
No, that's true. And in fairness, I think he was good in the likes of Fight Club in 1999 and American Psycho.
Who did he play in Fight Club?
He plays one of the minions, one of the kind of acolytes to Tyler Durden. And in both that and in American Psycho, both directors, they brutalise him. It does not end well for him in either film. He gets facially disfigured in one and killed in the other. And I think that's kind of a smart use of him, because you're taking male beauty standards and kind of distorting it. But he had promise. He's in a film called Requiem for a Dream around this time as well. Darren Aronofsky's film about drug addiction, a highly stylish picture and an excellent one, a real cautionary tale done with great abstraction. And he did have a very good performance. But I do think that since then he's regressed as an actor since he's gotten older, even though he did win an Oscar in the mid-2010s.
What was his Oscar for?
Dallas Buyers Club, the Matthew McConaughey film.
That was a huge film at the time.
It was pretty big. It was very well received. The late Jean-Marc Vallée, very good director. It was kind of a sensitive portrayal. The interesting thing is that Jared Leto plays a trans character, and I do wonder if the film is made today, would that happen? Like, Eddie Redmayne played a trans character as well. There was Oscar attention there, and it's like, I think you would cast a trans actor now. Leto is good in the film. The character is quite heartbreaking. It's a small role. I think it was a surprise that he won the Oscar, but it was certainly well received and people did cheer him on.
What about his public persona then? So all the stardom comes. How does people decide, I suppose, to use that in Hollywood in different ways? What is his public persona?
A strange one, I would say, and one that has gotten stranger over the years. He has an odd demeanour. I think especially as he's gone on, he's become very, very self-serious. You see him in interviews promoting things, even blockbuster films, and he's got this kind of dead-eyed stare, this kind of like very sonorous kind of almost stripped back voice. He doesn't bring a lot of charisma to these things. He seems kind of apathetic and not interested. And like I say, he does have a band as well, 30 Seconds to Mars, which, look, it's a vanity project. They're kind of terrible. I'll admit to liking a couple of their songs when I was younger, but they're like, it's not good. But they have a massive following. So he's a massive following.
I was going to say, Dave, this is your music opinion.
Of course, yeah.
A band are very popular and have done very well. So you know, this is your professional opinion.
Commercial sales don't necessarily mean quality, my friend, but I will say that yes, they have a gigantic following around the world. People should go and check out a documentary called Artifact, which is made about the band. It's from 2012. It's directed by Jared Leto under a pseudonym, and half of it is about the music industry and how it can swallow up bands and take advantage of them in terms of, you know, restrictive record deals and such. And the other half of it is melodramatic whining by Jared Leto because of the record deal that he signed. So he's someone who's very, very aware of his public persona, but by and large, I think he kind of puts himself out there as this kind of ethereal, mysterious guy, to the point that he literally runs a cult.
Well, we'll get to the cult in a second. But first, I want to talk about the filming of The Suicide Squad, because when we're talking about the personality and the persona and what goes on film sets, there was a lot of controversy about what did or didn't. I'm still not clear whether he did play these jokes or not, but he played the Joker in Suicide Squad and took it from the screen to the trailers of the cast.
Yeah, this is interesting because Suicide Squad is not a good movie, and I think most people would agree with me on that one. It just isn't. But Jared Leto playing the Joker was a big deal, because I think it was the first proper big screen incarnation of the Joker since the late Heath Ledger, who of course won a posthumous Oscar, and almost everybody on the street will tell you that's one of the greatest performances that you will ever see. And it is. It's a wonderful performance, and he had so much freedom and did so much with it. Jared Leto comes along and we get the early images of the character. He's got like the word damage tattooed on his face. He's got a silver grill in his mouth, and everyone's like, this it might be a bit over the top. But Jared Leto's probably the guy to do it. In terms of what he did in real life, though, he would consider himself a bit of a method actor, so he was kind of staying in character. His castmates, including the likes of Viola Davis and Margot Robbie, did say that he sent around gifts to them, individual personalised gifts to them, including the likes of used condoms, a dead pig, and a live rat. He also said that he watched footage of brutal crimes online to get into character. And people kind of call this out as, I mean, it's one thing to, like, Daniel Day-Lewis is Bill the Butcher in Gangs of New York on set. Do not talk to him as Daniel Day-Lewis. It's another thing to send a dead pig to your Hollywood co-star and not expect people to go, what are you doing? What?
He did deny some of that after the event.
Yeah, but, print the legend, I guess.
And then you mentioned the cult. This is one I struggle with. Explain the cult of Jared Leto and people going away on an island together to meditate.
Yeah, this is a legitimate thing. So it's largely tied to the band 30 Seconds to Mars, which he's in with his brother Shannon. He's the drummer. And they had this thing called Mars Island, a private resort off the coast of Croatia. Some people paid more than $6,500 to do this, to go and essentially switch off the world, get away from it all, get away from technology, get away from the news cycle, wear white robes like that band, The Polyphonic Spree, and just be at one with the earth. So the reporting on this, there's not a lot of it because there's not a lot of footage of this. The big news story that emerged from this, though, is that when they literally emerged from this resort and private island, the COVID-19 pandemic was upon us. Jared Leto and his followers had no idea that this was happening. And so they stumbled back into effectively an apocalypse.
Okay. You mentioned in your review that his career peaked many, many years ago. Before we talked to Alice from the BBC about the documentary and the current controversy, where is his career at today?
It's in a very strange position because I would think that if I ran a studio, I wouldn't think he was all that bankable, especially if you look at some of the recent projects that he's been a leading man of. There's a superhero film called Morbius. It was an absolute critical disaster. Commercially, it made a bit of money, but nowhere near enough. It became a living meme to the point that people were just taking the piss out of it online. And then the studio said, we need to capitalize on this. We need to get this back in the cinemas. And they did, and nobody went. But the bigger box office bombs were the Tron series, the latest in that one, which just doesn't seem to kind of catch on fire. Tron Ares, he's the lead of that. That massively underperformed. And then most recently, Masters of the Universe. Remember He-Man when we were kids? That's out now on Amazon Prime. I watched it for my sins at the weekend. I will say that Jared Leto is the best performance in the film. He's doing Skeletor, and it's just a vocal performance, and he does do a good job. But that film crashed and burned as well. I think he's box office poison. I don't know why you would put him in your movie. People don't seem to really be all that drawn to him in that world. The band is still going, though. They are touring at the moment. And again, they're playing big shows. They do have a following. He'll always have a career, unless, of course, what we're about to discuss derails that. But he just keeps getting jobs.
Alice McShane, you've directed this BBC documentary investigation, which has uncovered allegations, fresh allegations, because we'll talk a little bit about the history here. It's called Jared Leto, Hollywood's Dark Secret. Now, that is quite the title. What prompted this investigation? And did you start out thinking that you would end up with a title such as that?
Well, it all started last April. We saw a post go up on Instagram, and it was written by a DJ based in LA called Ali Teals. And in this Instagram post, she'd shared a screenshot of a Facebook status that she'd originally written in 2012 when she was 17. And in this post, this shared screenshot, she alleged that she was assaulted by Leto. She said that when she was 17, he tried to force himself on her backstage. And because Ali's got such a large following, she's got well over 100,000 followers, she started getting responses from other women who said they'd had similar experiences with him. And then Ali, with permission of these women who'd contacted her, started reposting these allegations on her Instagram story. So we were watching this all unfold, and I think 40 women in the end 40 women's stories were reposted by Ali. So this was quite surprising to behold. This is, multiple allegations against this massive player in Hollywood. So that was what really prompted us to start investigating.
It's very tricky to do an investigation like this because you're dealing with issues of sexual misconduct. You're dealing with someone who I presume is a multimillionaire with access to good lawyers and good legal teams. How do you go about gathering and verifying those stories as best you can?
Well, they always take a long time, these investigations. We started, as I said, back in April. It's now July and the film has gone out. That's a long production period for a current affairs investigation. But yeah, I mean, it's really just about spending the time, digging deeply, speaking to women. I think, there are a lot of allegations that exist online about Jared Leto already. I think we counted 120 that are in the online space on social media platforms, and they have also bubbled up into the mainstream press. I think the earliest example of this story bubbling up was back in 2005. There was an article in the New York Post which alleged that Leto had been approaching teenage models at a hotel and getting the numbers and texting them. But these allegations, specifically online, that were posted in high volumes, it doesn't necessarily mean that these women want to speak about those experiences. So, you're trying to track women down, trying to hear their stories, but it's very difficult when things are posted anonymously. So, yeah, it's a long and a slow process. It's of course, it's legally problematic. Leto's a man. He is alive, and you can't libel somebody that's dead. So he's a person that exists in the world. He's very, very famous. And yes, it takes a lot of careful journalism to bring a story like this to light.
So ultimately, you and your team focused in on 10 women who were willing to tell their stories.
That's right. Yeah, 10 women agreed to go on the record and share their stories with us. And 4 of those women actually allege criminal sexual misconduct. One of those women said that she was assaulted by him in a motel when she was 17. That was back in 2002. Another woman said she was threatened with sexual assault by him in 2013, and he was 41 at the time and she was 19. A third woman says that she had sex with Leto when she was underage. She was 17, and this event was alleged to have taken place in California, where the age of consent is 18. And this would actually be classified as a statutory rape. And Leto was 34 at that time. And then a fourth woman said that she described being groomed by him. He approached her when she was 16 and he was 42. This was right after he'd won his Oscar. He approached her outside a modeling agency and asked for her contact details, and then began this sort of relationship with her over the phone, whereby he would ask her very explicit questions. And yeah, I mean, there was a really significant age gap between Leto and Etta, which is not her real name, but she was 16 at the time.
You also spoke, Alice, to a number of people who were in his ether, if you like, in his environment at that through those years. In particular, one man who worked alongside the band 30 Seconds for Mars. What did he tell you?
Yeah, Brad. Brad came forwards and agreed to speak to us. Brad is not his real name, and actually he was voiced by an actor in the film. But he told us that he toured with the band for several years, and that he and other staff were quite uncomfortable with the way that Leto would interact with some of the female fans, the teenage female fans. 30 Seconds to Mars has a really big young fan base, a lot of teenage girls. And Brad says in the documentary that Leto would bring girls up on stage. You can see examples of this in the film. We cut to sort of archive clips of Leto bringing young girls on stage. He even says that Leto on occasion would ask for these girls to be brought backstage and brought to his dressing room. And Brad, of course, didn't know what happened from there. But certainly he said that these requests from Jared would make staff feel uncomfortable. He also told us that Jared would ask that they call up modeling agencies in the local in the areas that they were traveling to, usually the big cities, Milan, Berlin, in Europe primarily, and would ask for models to be brought to the shows. Another thing that made staff feel uncomfortable, Brad told us.
To get the full picture, I guess, of what we're dealing with here, Alice, people will have to watch the documentary. We're not trying to recreate it here, but maybe just to give one example, could you tell us the story of Alex?
Yes, yeah, Alex. Alex Alex is from Finland originally, but in 2013 she came to London to start modelling, and she joined an agency there. And this was one of the agencies that received a request, via Jared's staff to invite models from the agency to the show, and Alex was one of them. And she went along. She went along on her own. Actually, she was supposed to go with a friend, but her friend was sick on the day, so she went alone. Enjoyed the concert. And was taken to a sort of VIP room backstage afterwards, where she met Leto's assistant, who said to her, why don't you come to the after party? They were having an after party at Shoreditch House. And Alex, being quite new to the UK, was like, sure, that sounds like fun. And she went along. She said it was just her and about 8 other women, and then Jared. So this is quite a small select group. And she describes him sort of behaving quite strangely to her throughout the evening. And then she went to the bathroom and came out of the bathroom, and he was standing there. And she said they started having a conversation. He said something that prompted her to say, do you know how old I am? And she can't remember why she felt the need to do this, but she told him that she was 17 and she was actually 19. She thinks it was to protect herself in some way, because what he was saying was sort of sexual, or she thought that if she presented herself as a younger person or a child, then she might be protected in some way. And he responded to her, age is just a number, and anyway, we're in Europe. And then later that evening, the assistant asked Alex if she wanted to go on to another event after this after party. And Alex said at this point she was a bit drunk, her phone was dying, she was really feeling like she should probably try and make her way home, even though she wasn't entirely sure how to do that because she was so new to London. But she said she was really getting nudged by this assistant to go further and continue the evening and go on to this next place. So reluctantly Alex sort of agreed and thought, okay, I'll go, maybe there'll be other people there, of course, and it might be fun, and if it's not, then I can make my way home. But when she got to this next location, which was a hotel, she went up to the room and she got inside. She said it was dark, and she said Jared was just there alone. And she said, well, weren't there supposed to be other people here? And he said, no, it's just you and I. And she, at that point, she wanted to try and make her way home. She was uncomfortable in this situation. She asked for a phone charger. He said he didn't have one. She asked him for some cash. Maybe she could get a cab home. She didn't have any cash left that evening. He said, no, I don't have any cash. And then she was sitting on a chaise longue, and she thought to herself, maybe I could just sleep here, rather than try and make her way home in the middle of the night. So she said to him, can I just sleep here then? And then, really shockingly, he threatened to sexually assault her if she was to fall asleep. She couldn't quite believe her ears, and she said, what did you say? And he repeated the same line again, which I won't repeat here because it's quite explicit what he said to her, but please do go and watch the documentary. And then she started to plan her escape, and luckily she did manage to get out of the room. She went to the bathroom first, and then which was close to the door, and managed to get out of there. But it was quite. She was really quite sort of shaken by what happened to her. But the thing that remains with her so much about this story is the role that the assistant played in getting her to that place. And I think it's really important because it just shows how the people around him, were quite sort of complicit in this behaviour and enabled it. I'm sure demands would have come from Jared to his staff, as we know from Brad. The people were asked to do things they were uncomfortable with, but certainly the assistant played a significant role in getting Alex into that room, which turned out to be quite an unsafe place.
Now, of course, Alice, we have to repeat, these are all allegations. And there is a passage of time and everything that comes with this. So I presume you put all of this to Jared Leto, to his people. What response did you get?
Well, despite repeated attempts to contact Leto, we never received a response to the allegations that we put to him. He has since issued a statement to US media. He says, I have never sexually assaulted anyone in my life. These claims are absolutely and categorically false. But as yet, we still haven't received a response to our allegations.
And in terms of where this goes now, obviously we're several years on really from the big Me Too movement in Hollywood. What has the reaction been since all of this has aired?
Well, it does seem to be making waves around the world, which is really great to see. For the women that sacrificed a huge amount to take part in this, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to tell such a personal and painful story in a film like this. And, you hope as a filmmaker that it does have an impact. So they feel like it was, it was worth reliving all that pain again. So it's really great to see that it's being picked up. But, we'll see. We'll see the kind of attitudes to stories like this. I feel it 10 years after Me Too have slightly, or certainly the outrage around them anyway, has slightly cooled. It seems like, um, behavior of this nature in a weird way seems to have been normalized. I don't, and there are stories like this that have not had the impact that maybe they would have 10 years ago. But I do really, really hope that certainly, Hollywood sits up and takes notice and thinks twice before giving Leto a major role in a movie again.